Hi, my name is Samantha Hicks. I'm the Associate Director of Client Services and Scholarships and Financial Aid and Scholarships here at Coastal Carolina University. And I'm really excited to be able to come to you and share some information about financial aid as it relates to your endeavors into higher education. I know that right now is a very interesting and delicate time for students who are potentially looking at coming to Coastal or any other institution of higher education right now. And so we wanted to take some time to share that information with you. I am going to give you some general information about financial aid and scholarships, how that works here at Coastal, but also I do recognize that the environment right now with coronavirus and COVID-19 really has kind of change the entire process of applying for college, applying for financial aid. And so just keep in mind, these are general updates. At the end, I will give you some resources on how to contact our office to ask specific questions, but also some just general things, how we are handling this situation and what we're doing to assist you during this time. It wasn't too terribly long ago, longer than I like to admit, but it wasn't too terribly long ago that I was looking at going to college. I was a local student here in Conway, wanted to attend Coastal Carolina University, didn't really look at going anywhere else, but when I went to my parents and said, hey, I would like to go to college. I come from a very large family. There were 6 kids. We really did not have the resources financially to send each kid to college. So my parents kind of looked at me and chuckled and said, good luck. And so I quickly had to learn to navigate this process. And sometimes it can be a complex process. And part of what I love to do every day is to share that process with other potential students and parents and families. And so hopefully you'll get some information out of that today. The biggest tip that I can give anybody when it comes to trying to apply for financial aid is to start early. Just like any process when it comes to applying for college, you want to start as early as possible. Now, I do recognize that SAT and ACT tests have been put on hold right now, but in general, we like to encourage students and parents to make sure that their students apply for SAT, ACT prep courses, get those done as quickly as possible, and make sure that you put all the schools that you are interested in attending on those test score reports. It tends to save you money if you do it when you take the course rather than going back later to add them or send the scores to them at a later time. Also want to encourage you to visit the colleges. Again, I do recognize that seems to be a challenge right now, but many institutions across the nation are working to bring the colleges to you in the comfort of your home through virtual visits. But once hopefully we all get back to normal, we really encourage that you will reach out to colleges, set up a campus visit. If you can visit multiple times, visit multiple times. You obviously want to apply early. Check your college that you're planning to go to. See if they have priority admissions dates or priority scholarship dates. You want to know those deadlines if they apply to you. We do recognize that seniors sometimes do get senior-itis, so if you can, try to maintain those senior grades, whether those courses are happening on your high school campus or whether you're taking dual enrollment courses or maybe you're just taking college-level courses. Just make sure that you're keeping those grades up. Use those resources that your high school and your guidance counselors provide for you to keep those grades up. Some schools do look at that when they're considering scholarship eligibility or even admissions eligibility, so we definitely want to make sure that you do your best in that part. I tend to see a lot of students and parents get what I call their college folder. It's a big folder where they tend to throw a bunch of random documents in there that they get from all the different colleges they're looking at. And I don't discourage that, but I also want to encourage you to make sure that you keep a calendar in there. Try to stay as organized as possible and put a calendar in there. Mark those dates. What you don't want to happen is you don't want to approach a school on move-in day and say, hey, how much does it cost to go here? You definitely don't want that. So one of the things that we actually ask parents and students to do is, as you're visiting these colleges, make sure that you're visiting the financial aid office. Make sure you're asking some of those tough questions. How much does it cost to go here? What are my financial aid options? What is the typical price out of pocket for a student that's attending this university? And you want to make sure that you have those conversations up front so that you are well prepared when it comes to the scholarship process. Now, when we're talking about timelines, typically for an incoming student, we recommend And really everything starts gearing up. The fall semester of your senior year is when you're going to start applying for financial aid, when you're going to start applying for scholarships. But of course you can start early. One of the things that many schools do, and one of the things the federal government requires that we do, is we have to calculate what's called our cost of attendance. The cost of attendance is generally built to give you an idea of what you may expect to spend for a year at that institution. We do include both direct versus indirect expenses. So direct expenses are going to be those things that show up on your bill, your tuition, your housing, your board, or your meal plan. And that may vary depending on what classes you take, what housing options you choose, what meal plan options are offered. But typically in that cost of attendance, you're given a kind of an average of what that might look like. You're also given some indirect expenses, so things that are not going to show up on your bill, but that are certainly part of the college experience that we want you to keep in mind. So things like books and supplies. Books can be pretty expensive, so we want you to prepare for that in advance. There are other miscellaneous items that you may experience, like transportation. How are you going to afford to get back on and off campus during spring break? You know, if you have to fly back home or drive home to visit your parents for the weekend. Those are just some other expenses that you may want to consider. So you can see we break those down versus, South Carolina resident versus out-of-state resident living on campus or off campus. Those are differences in the cost that you may experience. This is not actually what you're going to see on your bill. So here at Coastal, our direct expenses are tuition and fees and the room and board. That's what you're going to see on a bill here at Coastal. Your indirect expenses are books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. You will never see a bill for those expenses. Those are just things that you can anticipate popping up. But you do want to make financial plans for them. You don't want to assume that just because it's not on the bill, you don't have to pay for it. Those are other expenses that you may want to consider. And that's going to vary at every institution. So as you're starting your search, you just want to make sure that you are asking that question. What is your cost of attendance? What does that look like? Do I get charged for books, or is that something I'm going to have to look out for on my own? Is the housing included or is it not included? How do you work with off-campus housing? Those are some of the questions that you may want to look into. So at Coastal, we do bill by semester. So every semester you will receive your bill. In financial aid and scholarships, we tend to look at everything for the year just because it's easier. Our goal is to keep you here all year. We don't want you to afford one semester and not be able to come back. So we like to see you both semesters, so we typically do our math for the year. What that looks like may vary again on some of the choices that you choose and whether you're in-state or out-of-state. So for fall of 2019, keep in mind we don't know our tuition prices yet for 2020, so everything is based on the current academic year. For fall 2009, if you're in-state, your tuition is about $11,000 a year, but your first bill is only going to be for the fall semester. So you've got the tuition for about $5,820, and then you've got your room and your meal plan cost. These again can vary depending on, did you choose an unlimited meal plan or did you choose maybe a more restricted meal plan? Are you living in a single room by yourself, or are you in a double room that you're sharing with another roommate? All of those choices can change kind of the price point that you're looking at, but we do typically quote students about $11,000 a semester total, so that's tuition, room, and board if they're in state. If you're out of state, as you can see, that's a little bit more expensive. Okay, it's a lot more expensive, but it is about $26,000 for the tuition component, and then when you throw meal plan and room and board, you're talking about $36,000 to $38,000. We are pretty comparable with the rest of the schools in our state. We're also consistently voted one of the best values for college education in our region. So even though it does seem expensive, just remember that you are investing in your education, and Coastal Carolina University is a great place to do that. So we just wanted to provide you, kind of what it will look like if you do choose to go to Coastal, what a sample bill would look like. Again, keep in mind you do have those additional expenses. So books are usually about $1,000 a year. So even though you're putting your financial aid package together for your bill, you also want to include those other expenses. So that's kind of the bad side. The bad news is that college is expensive. Kind of the really great news is, and the part that I'm really passionate about sharing, is that there is assistance out there. And so again, this is going to vary at every institution. I'm going to tell you a lot about how that works here at Coastal, but you could take these questions and share that at any institution. So you're going to want to find out, what does the actual college offer? Do they offer any institutional scholarships? Do they offer any institutional need-based scholarships? You're also going to want to find out what your state does. If you're in South Carolina has a very robust state program for higher education. There are some other states that also provide some assistance. And then you want to ask the question, if my student goes, if I'm from Vermont and my student goes to Coastal, are there other opportunities that are out there? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take some time to talk about the federal aid as well. Basically, what does the FAFSA mean? What's all covered in that? And then kind of what happens when I get my financial aid award package and it's not enough? What's next? And that's where those other payments and other loans may come into place. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. In the world of financial aid, everybody loves free money. And free money is scholarships and grants. So we want to try to get as much scholarships as possible. Again, Coastal does offer some institutional merit and need-based awards. There is an automatic review process, so once your student applies to the university and submits test scores and transcripts, we will do an automatic review. We do take a look and do what's called a holistic review. So we don't just look at GPA and test score. We also look at what was the academic rigor of their high school classes. What types of classes did they take? Were they just in regular classes or were they taking AP and dual enrollment classes? We take a look at all that information and we put together the best financial aid package that we can offer the student and send that to the student. We always encourage you to send updated scores, and if you have any questions, this process is housed in our Office of Admissions and Merit Awards, so you can reach out to them at any time. I'll provide you with their contact information later on today, so you can reach out to them if you have any questions about that. We also offer application-based scholarships. So we have what's called the Coastal Education Foundation. It is our nonprofit arm of our institution, and a big part of what they do is they try to raise funds to offer scholarships for students. These are donor scholarships. And the way that students have access to them is that we put out 2 cycles where students can apply for these scholarships. The first cycle opens up in October of every year. The second cycle opens in January. We are actually done with this cycle for 2020-21, so I hope that if you're attending in 2020-21, you've already applied. If you missed that deadline, or maybe you're looking at starting at a later time, don't worry. October will be here before you know it, and you can apply for next year's cycle. So these are donor scholarships. The donors essentially get to set the requirements for those scholarships, which means they have a wide variety of requirements. I will give you a little tip. Some of them may have very strict requirements, or they may have very lenient requirements, and then a lot of them will have what are called preferences. Don't let the preferences discourage you from applying. Some of these preferences can be very specific. So for example, there's one scholarship in particular that the preference says students will be considered with preference given to students whose parents work at Garden City Furniture. I've lived in South Carolina since I was 9 years old. I have never visited Garden City Furniture, so I can't imagine we have that many students whose parents work at Garden City Furniture. But that doesn't mean they're not going to give that scholarship away. It just means that there's a preference built in. So we still encourage students to definitely apply for those scholarships. Many of them have what are called additional requirements, where they may have to write an essay or provide proof of community service, or read a book and write an essay, something along those lines. I usually tell people a lot of people apply for these scholarships, only a little bit actually do the additional requirements. So by doing everything that you're supposed to do with those scholarships, you're already kind of giving yourself an advantage. So again, those will start up again for 2021-22 in October. Will be the next time those are available. The application itself will be on WebAdvisor, and we will communicate that information as we go throughout the academic year. South Carolina also offers a state scholarship program for South Carolina residents who graduated from South Carolina high schools. You are automatically considered for those scholarships. Essentially, we just need your transcripts. Once we get those in, we will offer you a preliminary award, basically saying, hey, it looks like you're going to get these scholarships once we get your final high school transcript. Eligibility is determined on that final high school transcript. Essentially, you have to have a 3.0 high school GPA, and then if you meet other requirements, you may qualify for the Hope Scholarship, the Life Scholarship, or even the Palmetto Fellow Scholarship. All of those information are posted on our website, so we just really encourage you to go check that out. You can work closely with your high school guidance counselors if you think that you may qualify for a state scholarship, or if you want to know exactly what you need to do for qualify for one of those. The other type of scholarship are outside organizations. There are all kinds of outside organizations that have scholarship opportunities. So I've seen scholarships for, Dr. Pepper gave a student one time for making a video about why he liked college football. I've seen bass fishing scholarships, knitting scholarships. Oscar Mayer has one for students named Oscar. So there are a ton of scholarship opportunities that are out there. We actually, on our financial aid webpage, do provide some scholarship search engines that you and your students can use to look for scholarship opportunities. You may want to check with your local employer. You may want to check with your local organization. Those are some other great scholarship opportunities out there. We get a lot of questions sometimes like, hey, my parent is disabled. Do I qualify for a scholarship? Or I'm a minority. Do I qualify for a scholarship? Those are great search terms to use with these scholarship databases. So when you go in there, you can use keywords to search, like your major or maybe a unique hobby that you have, or a unique identifier about yourself that you may want to search and try to find if there are scholarship opportunities out there. Again, you don't ever want to pay for scholarship searches. That's kind of the bad thing about scholarships. Sometimes when you go look out there, you may run into some scam websites. So it doesn't make sense to pay money to get money. So don't pay for scholarships. If you're on a website that's asking for credit card information, get off of that. You just want to try to do your best to put in the work to find those scholarships. I usually tell people scholarship searches can feel a lot like shopping at TJ Maxx. You're going to go through and you might look through a bunch of scholarship opportunities. You may try out 4 or 5 and you might only end up with 1. But every bit of free money that we can get is going to be beneficial to you. And I promise if you don't have to use student loan debt because you got a scholarship, you will be glad of that when you graduate. So definitely check out our scholarship opportunities that we have posted on our website and try to get as much free money as possible. Again, I've kind of already mentioned this, but South Carolina does also offer some state aid for our South Carolina residents. We have the state scholarship program. We also have the South Carolina need-based grant, which is given on a first-come, first-served basis to our South Carolina residents who fill out a FAFSA and qualify. You don't have to do anything to apply for that need-based grant. We do review students automatically for that. There is also a South Carolina teacher's loan for our students who are interested in education. This is serviced through the South Carolina Student Loan Corporation. They typically put out the application in March or April every year. The application for 2020-21 is currently available on their website. So if you are interested in teaching, I really encourage you to look into that. It is a loan, but it does have some forgiveness options for those students who choose to teach in South Carolina. So I definitely recommend that you look into that if you're planning to teach. If you're not from South Carolina, don't fret. Your state may have other grants. So I do know, like I mentioned, Vermont. Vermont is a state that does offer a state grant called VSAC, and they actually allow students to take that to outside states and use it. So check in with your state. They may have some opportunities available for you to take their state grants outside. South Carolina does not permit its state grants to be used outside of South Carolina, but some states do. So definitely check into that. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our office. Kind of the other part of free money when it comes to federal financial aid is the grants. So what federal grants are available? Not everybody's going to qualify for grants, but the Kickstarter to all of that is to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. You'll see that word free. Please don't ever pay to have your FAFSA filled out. There are a couple of websites out there, again, that will try to get you to fill out. I've seen them as high as $300 for you to fill out an application. That is what we are here for, so please don't ever pay money to fill this out. It is a free website. Essentially, it is the student's FAFSA. Each student needs a FAFSA. So parents, if you have multiple students, each student will have a FAFSA and you'll sign multiple FAFSAs. The student and parent have to sign the FAFSA with what's called a Federal Student Aid ID. That is a username and password combination that you will create. It's something actually that the student and parent will retain throughout their time here at Coastal or throughout their time using federal financial aid, even on through graduate school. So your first step is to create that FSA ID, and you do that online at studentaid.gov. and then retain it. Put it somewhere safe. I'm not sure this is the safest place, but many of our students put it in a note in their cell phone so that they can access it throughout their time in college. But again, both the student and the parent needs one. You will fill out the FAFSA every year. And so you do that online at studentaid.gov. So if you have not filled out the FAFSA yet for 2020-21, I really encourage you to go out and do that. If you have, then great. We'll talk about next steps in just a minute. But if you are looking for years past 2020-21, just keep in mind FAFSA is available on October 1st of each year. The FAFSA is going to offer or ask for some income information. So it may ask for tax information. If you've been around for a little while, you may remember that you used to have to file your taxes and then do your FAFSA. They have actually changed where now they're using prior year tax information. So for 2020-21, the FAFSA is based on 2018 tax information. So you should already have that because that's 2 years ago. So you don't have to wait to file your taxes as long as you filed your 2018 taxes. So they've actually made it pretty convenient now. They have a button that you can click that will actually take you to the IRS website, and that will allow you to link your tax information, bring it over to the FAFSA with just a click of a couple buttons. It's kind of interesting how connected those two things are. So it makes filling out the FAFSA a little bit easier. So you just want to try to use that. Use the data, it's called the data retrieval tool. Use that if at all possible. You used to have to hold your tax return and go line by line and fill out the FAFSA, and this has just simplified the process. I think I can fill out a FAFSA in like 10 minutes. So it's just made it a little bit easier. The earlier you do the FAFSA, the better off you are. There are some things, I mentioned the South Carolina Need-Based Grant. There are some other things that are first come, first serve. Work study is first come, first serve. So essentially, the earlier you do the FAFSA, the better off you are, because we base some of those first come, first serve awards on the date that your file was complete, which is driven by the date the FAFSA was complete. What the FAFSA essentially does is it comes up with a number. This number is called the expected family contribution. The FAFSA is a big mathematical formula. It's got a lot of science behind it by people that are much smarter than me. But it comes up with this theoretical number called the expected family contribution. In theory, that's how much your family can contribute for a year to your student's education. In reality, they didn't ask you questions like, what's your mortgage? What bills are you paying? How many people do you have to feed? They don't ask you real life questions. So it's not a real good indicator of real life, but that number is what drives what kind of financial aid that you qualify for. So when you finish filling out a FAFSA, the website is actually going to give you that estimated family contribution. And it's going to tell you what it thinks you qualify for based on that information. That could include the Pell Grant. It could include a federal supplemental educational opportunity grant, or it may not include any grants. So we do have some people that when they fill out the FAFSA, they don't qualify for grants. However, everybody is going to get something from filling out the FAFSA. It is our application for federal student loans. So you may get your student aid report and see that the only thing you qualify for are student loans, and that's perfectly fine. Again, we'll talk about what that looks like when it's time to pay your bill. How do you make out that gap? So there are a couple of questions that we commonly get about financial aid, so I do want to take some time to address those. Number one, I can file my FAFSA as an independent student without my parents' information, especially when my parents don't claim me as a dependent on their taxes. This is unfortunately not true. So FAFSA operates on the assumption that it is the family's responsibility to help the student financially afford going to college. Now, you and I both know that's not always the case, and a lot of family dynamics right now do not kind of fall in line with that mindset, but that is kind of how the FAFSA is built. So typically, FAFSA considers all students dependent until they reach the age of 24. Or they can answer yes to one of the other independent questions. So you are dependent until you're 24, married, you've got a child that you support 50% or more, you're an active member of the military, something like that. Financial independence is not something that's considered with the FAFSA. They still require the parents' information to go on there until that student is 24. So FAFSA itself, when you're actually filling out the form, will walk you through some of those questions, but that is something that we get a lot. I'm financially independent, I'm 24, I don't, want to put my parents' information on there. They make too much money. And unfortunately, we can't allow that. And there are very strict restrictions on who is dependent and independent. So then the question also comes up with who is a parent? It's asking for my parent. A parent is an adoptive or legal or biological parent. So that means somebody that adopted you or your biological parents are who you're going to list on the FAFSA. Now that isn't always possible because sometimes students have extenuating circumstances. So maybe they have a deceased parent, or maybe someone has not really gone through court to adopt them, but they've been kind of taken on that parental role. There is actually now an option on the FAFSA for the student to mark that they have an extenuating circumstance, and then it will actually encourage the student to reach out to the financial aid office, because we do have some options where we can walk the student if they do meet certain qualifications. So I definitely encourage you, if you find yourself in that situation, don't get frustrated. Finish the FAFSA the best you can and then contact us. We'll be glad to look at that. We've kind of already talked about my financial aid eligibility will be the same regardless of when I submit my FAFSA. Obviously, that's just not true. There are some things that are first come, first serve, so my best advice is to get it done as soon as possible. There's no real hard deadline. We do have a March 1st priority deadline, so we do encourage everyone to get their FAFSA in by March 1st, but it's not the end of the world if you haven't done that. There's still time to get your FAFSA in for 2020-21. You can put up to 10 schools on the FAFSA, but if you did not add Coastal to your original FAFSA, good news. You can go back on there and add us now. So definitely go and get the FAFSA done if you haven't done it, or if you didn't add Coastal, go ahead and add us on there. Once you submit the FAFSA, we start kind of communicating with you. So one of the ways that we do that is through WebAdvisor. WebAdvisor is our online student portal, and there is a section both on the student and the applicant menu that is specific to financial aid. There's lots of options there. Typically, once we receive your FAFSA, we'll send you an email that says, hey, congratulations, we've got your FAFSA, go look at your award letter. Or we'll say, hey, we've got your FAFSA, we need some information before we can provide you with a financial aid package. If you get the email that we are missing information, WebAdvisor is where you can see what information we're missing. So under the financial aid section, there is a link that says missing information. If you'll click on that link, you will see a list of any items that we need. You can also check your financial aid status by term here on this link. And most importantly, you can see your financial aid award letter at any time on WebAdvisor. So we really encourage students to use that link if at all possible. We do also send paper award letters to our new students, so you should receive kind of paper letter that says, hey, here's your financial aid package. But if you're just really anxious to look at it, or maybe there's been a revision or you're missing information, WebAdvisor is the best place to look at that. So we've talked a little bit about institutional aid, state aid, federal aid. We talked a lot about free money. So let's talk about the four-letter word that nobody likes, and that is loan. A loan does have to be repaid, and I know a lot of students really don't like to borrow, and I completely understand that. I do encourage students that if they do have to use student loans, or your parent is borrowing for your time here at Coastal, that you do it wisely. There are wise ways that you can do it so it's not such a nightmare when you get out. A loan does have to be repaid, so keep that in mind. When you're starting to use loans and borrow them, we do a lot of work kind of on the forefront in conjunction with the federal government to hopefully help you understand what that means when you have to pay it back. But you definitely want to try to limit loan borrowing as much as possible. I mentioned earlier that the FAFSA is the application for federal student loans, so any student who does a FAFSA is automatically offered student loans. They are called direct student loans through the U.S. Department of Education. They are the best kind of student loans that a student's going to get. They have low fixed interest rates. Right now, I think it's sitting at about 4.5%, and that's pretty low. The student does not have to pay on that while they are in school. The payment is automatically deferred until after they graduate, as long as they're enrolled at least half-time. They can certainly pay on it, but they don't have to. Some students may qualify for a portion of their federal loans to be subsidized while they're in school, which means it's not accruing interest. The loan amounts are set by the Department of Education, so typically freshmen receive $5,500, sophomores $6,500, juniors and seniors $7,500. So you can see typically those loan amounts are unfortunately not enough to cover, especially if you're looking at a $36,000 bill. So what are the other options if with my scholarship, my Pell Grant, my student loans, or a combination of those, what happens if if that doesn't cover everything? There are other loan options available. So the federal government does also provide what's called a Parent Plus loan. This is a loan in the parent's name. Now, students, this is when you cozy up to your parents really closely and you hug them and kiss them and tell them how beautiful they are. They can borrow for you. Isn't that great? So they can actually take out a federal student loan in their name with the Department of Education. Again, it's a fixed interest rate loan. Right now it's sitting at about 7%, so it's not a horrible interest rate. It does accrue interest while the student is in school, but the parent does have the option to defer payments on that one as well. Those loan limits are not set like the student loan. So if a parent applies for that, it is credit based. So the government's going to run a quick credit check. When they apply, they are actually given a decision within about 45 seconds. If they are approved, that can cover up to cost of attendance. So that can actually give the student additional funds to cover books, any kind of other expenses. They can do up to the cost of attendance. If the parent is denied that loan based on their credit history, it actually still benefits the student, because then what the government allows us to do is to apply an additional $4,000 to $5,000, depending on their grade level, to the student's loan. So a freshman student, instead of getting the normal $5,500, if their parent is denied the Parent Plus loan, they will get $9,500. So it actually gives the students access to a little more funding in an unsubsidized student loan. There are other options as well. So Coastal does actually offer an in-house payment plan. Right now, that payment plan is a 4-payment payment plan. So each semester, you can divide your balance minus any financial aid into 4 payments. Typically, that payment is due on August 1st, and then the payments go September 1st, October 1st, November 1st. It makes it much more manageable and hopefully, kind of discourages borrowing for payments that you can actually bring down and break down into a payment plan. We don't have there's a setup fee, an initial setup fee on that, but there's no interest that accrues or anything because we do it all in-house. There's also private loans, and we do encourage families and students to use private loans as a last option. The reason that we say that is because private loans are managed through private lenders. So you may have heard of Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, Discover. Those are examples of private lenders. Your student and you can use any private lender that you would like, but we do encourage you that you research the private lender. Typically with those private lenders, their interest rates can vary by quarter. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the best interest rate possible. I've seen some as low as 3 and 4%, but I have also seen as high as 13 and 14% interest. And that's really going to hurt when that student graduates and has to pay all that back. So definitely only borrow what you absolutely need and make sure that you are shopping wisely if you're using those private loan options. On our financial aid website, we do have a loan comparison tool, so you don't have to go blindly Googling private loan to see what options are out there. You can actually view some kind of common lenders that our students use. You can compare on one screen up to 5 lenders and look at their interest rates, look at their borrower benefits, look to see if a student is able to defer the payments while they're in school or if they have to make payments while they're in school. Typically with a private loan, it is in the student's name, but the student is typically required to have a cosigner. So usually the parent's name ends up on it somewhere, but it doesn't have to be a parent. It could also be a family friend or a stranger on the street if you can get them to apply for a loan with you. We don't really monitor who that cosigner is, but if you get it approved, that's great. So typically the timeline to apply for those other loan options is usually March and April, but again, you don't really see your bill until July. So if you wait until June or July, that's not a problem either to make that decision of how you best want to cover the bill. We just ask that you make sure that you have payment in place for our August 1st payment deadline typically. So if you have any questions about that process, again, feel free to reach out. Lastly, I just want to give you some helpful links, some people that you may talk to kind of throughout the process. So obviously our student accounts office is the office that handles billing and payments. They also handle any of the external scholarship funds that come in. If you have any questions about 529 plans, their office also processes those 529 plans. So you can definitely reach out to their website through student accounts. We have some students that also use VA benefits. So our Veteran Services does a phenomenal job working with our VA students and coordinating those VA benefits. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to their office. I'm also providing you with a link to our scholarships page. So this shows kind of a summary of everything that I talked about with scholarships. It'll give you a more detailed information about how to qualify, how to apply, and where to find information about those things. WebAdvisor is also another really useful link throughout your entire process here at Coastal Carolina University, so I can't give you information and not give you the WebAdvisor link. We do have some students that may be here on the Academic Common Market program, so certain states and certain majors may qualify for a waiver of out-of-state tuition. That state has to be a part of the Southern Regional Education Board. They are still out-of-state students, but you'll get a waiver that makes it where you only pay in-state rates. So again, you have to be one of the approved states and you have to be one of the approved majors. So there's information on our website, coastal.edu/ACM. Please note that if you do qualify for the Academic Common Market waiver, you cannot have that waiver and a merit scholarship at the same time. You do have to choose which one. We typically see students choosing the Academic Common Market waiver because it's worth more, but you cannot have both of those at the same time. For our students who have questions about their South Carolina residency requirements, you can also reach out to our Office of Admissions and Merit Awards. They do determine residency, and so you can read their requirements. Or if you are considering becoming a South Carolina resident, you can also read their requirements online at their website. And then, of course, our loan information is on our website at coastal.edu/financial/loan. So you can see our loan comparison tool there. Lastly, I do want to mention, obviously, we are going through a time of kind of transformation in higher education right now with everything going on with the coronavirus. So we do suggest that students and parents, both our current students and our potential incoming students, stay tuned to Coastal's advisory page. That's where the most up-to-date information is shared. And so we want you to stay tuned. There's all kinds of information there. I know they just posted something today about orientation. So we really want you to stay tuned to that website. We're getting a lot of questions too. Many families are being impacted by COVID-19 and the coronavirus as far as family members being laid off. I have my own family members that have been laid off or furloughed because of not being able to work. And that is having real implications on students. So we just wanted to mention that, in the event that you are really experiencing kind of that change in income, and I mentioned that FAFSA is based on 2018 income. Well, in 2018, maybe your family was making a lot more money than they are now. We do have a process that we can review kind of that change in income and see what it does to your financial aid package. It won't always make a difference in the calculation that the government provides, because we do have to work in kind of that framework that they provide as far as grant eligibility. But certainly if you or your family have really experienced a change in income since 2018 due to the coronavirus, we do encourage you to reach out to one of our financial aid counselors. Let us walk you through the process. Let us look at everything and see if there's anything that we can do to provide, further assistance for your time here at Coastal. I do want to point out that for that process, we do look at your 2020 income if you're starting in 2020-21. So we're going to ask questions about your 2020 income. And for many people applying for unemployment insurance or who are looking to, receive benefits in 2020 they have not received yet, we may require you to wait further into 2020 to kind of see exactly what you may qualify for. Finally, I also want to say that we are open. We may not be on campus. We're working remotely, but we do have counselors on standby. They are available for phone calls. They're also available for email. So feel free to reach out to our office. We do have a way that you can submit documents. So we actually have an upload option on WebAdvisor. If you clicked on that missing information link, you'll see a link to our upload, kind of a electronic Dropbox that you can use. It's a secure Dropbox, so you can upload information in there without worrying about any of your private information getting out. And we are still processing those documents as they come in. Typically, those documents do take 5 to 14 business days to process. We are not hitting 14 days yet. Right now, we're actually about 5 to 7. So definitely, if you're missing information, still get that into us. Some kind of up and coming things that will be happening is we are trying to look now to see if we can offer virtual appointments. So if you wanted to meet with a financial aid counselor face to face, how can we do that through video chat software or something like that? So we will announce that information more as we have it, but we definitely encourage, if that's something that you want, please reach out. We are here for you during those times. And then, of course, our Office of Admissions and Merit Awards is doing a fantastic job with virtual events. So definitely stay tuned to social media, to Coastal social media, and definitely take advantage of those virtual events that are available. Coastal's Financial Aid and Scholarships Facebook page, we are also offering some virtual events there. Right now on Mondays from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., I will actually be going live. So it'll give you an opportunity for some live Q&A and to hear some updates from our office. So that's another outlet that you can reach out to our office and touch base with us. If you have any questions, our contact information is provided. So our telephone number, our website, our email address for both financial aid and scholarships and the Office of Admissions and Merit Awards is provided. So please, like I said, feel free to reach out. I often tell people, and it makes them laugh, sometimes when people picture financial aid workers, they picture these old ladies that are kind of at their desk not doing anything, kind of grumpy. That's not the case. One of the great things about Coastal is the people that work there. We actually love what we do. We love hearing from you. So definitely reach out if at all possible, and we'll look forward to hearing from you.